Welcome to the Boss Podcast, the best of social selling. Your host, Mark McInnes, Australia's #1 social seller, author of Tactical Pipeline Growth, and B2B sales trainer, brings you expert opinion, tactics, and discussion to help you get more out of your time on social.
Daniel Disney is a likable guy. With more than 10 million people consuming his content every month, he certainly knows how to build an audience. But his strategies are surprisingly accessible for everyone. The Best of Social Selling podcast is designed to bring you tactical plays that you can use on LinkedIn to drive great sales conversations. And Daniel supplies us with some simple but effective tactics that we can use. In this episode, Dan shares what our daily routines should be, as well as a couple of really nice engagement strategies that have worked well for him in the past, including a story that he says he only shares inside his personal training sessions. For those who are supporters of and promote and listen to the pod, I'm very grateful. Please continue to do so. If you found this pod to be useful, feel free to share on social or tell your friends and colleagues about us. But before we head across to Daniel, I wanted to give a special shout out to Con Soditis for being such a great supporter of the pod and providing a nice rating on Apple. Con, I know you listen to absolutely every episode. Please send me a DM with your address and I'll send you a copy of my brand new book, Tactical Pipeline Growth. TPG, as I'm calling it, Tactical Pipeline Growth, is how to build sales pipeline quickly and ethically. It's an absolute must-read for all sales reps and sales leaders. If you'd like a copy of the book yourself, you can either grab a copy from my website, which is markmc.co/TPG, or Amazon or your usual book suppliers. If you'd like to win a copy, all you need to do is supply some great feedback either on LinkedIn or on your podcast services, and I'll pick one new person every week to give a signed book to. But now, let's hear from Daniel Disney on the Boss Podcast. So joining me on the podcast today, I'm lucky enough to have Dan Disney. Dan is a LinkedIn social selling trainer and the author of a fantastic book called The £1 Million LinkedIn Message. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Mark, thank you for inviting me. This is an awesome podcast. I've been following you for a long time now, so really excited to be chatting with you today from very different parts of the world.
It is amazing that we can do this from all over the place. Technology and social media has certainly helped with that, that's for sure. So the Daily Sales blog, I just realised that while I was doing some research that it reaches nearly 10 million people every month. That's some serious reach, buddy. That's really well done.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been going for about 4.5 years now. And yeah, we are literally days away from hitting 600,000 followers on LinkedIn. We grow by about 10,000 new followers a month. And yeah, content, I think last year we reached about 150 million people between January and December, which is crazy. But it's a page that's purely for salespeople. So it just shares content of a mixed variety. So there's educational content from blogs to webinars to ebooks. There's inspirational content from motivational quotes and sales tips. And there's entertaining content from sales memes to sales videos and GIFs. It's, I kind of created it just to sort of create a page and platform that salespeople could follow and then on a daily basis kind of have all those little ingredients you need to get through a tough day in sales.
Yeah, I think it's a real testament to what you can achieve if you've got a little bit of passion and a good idea. I think that's incredible, mate. Very, very well done. That's super impressive. 5 stars. So we've called this podcast the Boss, the Best of Social Selling podcast. And Dan, you absolutely hit the nail on the head in that you're the perfect boss to have on here. The reach that you've got is impressive on LinkedIn. Every time I open up my LinkedIn instance, there you are, providing some really great value to lots and lots of people. So I'm sure the listeners are going to get something really powerful out of what you share with us today. So thank you again.
No, you're more than welcome. I'm excited to be on this. I'm a very passionate social seller. I literally wear it on my T-shirt. And same as you, Mark, I think we're both on the same page. We're both very passionate about genuinely helping salespeople, sales teams leverage LinkedIn and social to its full potential. No fluff, no theory, just real tips that can deliver real results. I'm sure we'll dig deep in today and try and pack it with as much as we can.
Yeah, I think we will. And I think that's why we've sort of aligned so quickly. So can you share a little bit about yourself and also your organisation, just so perhaps if people have been living under a rock, or they haven't had the opportunity to see, or they're not quite sure what's going on with Daniel Disney. Would you give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yeah, so I've been working in sales now for about 17 years. First job I ever had at 16. So I am sales, to the core. Like I genuinely and very sadly and geekily love sales. And, I'm a traditional salesperson by trait. My majority of my sales career was out knocking on doors, making cold calls. But what I noticed about 8 years ago was this sort of move into, digital spaces. Social media was becoming such a big part of our lives. And when LinkedIn started to really grow, suddenly there was a social media network for work that had your prospects on it, your customers on it, your colleagues on it, your industry on it. And there were so many ways you could leverage it, from connecting to research to starting conversations to, building a brand. And all of these things just became such a powerful part of sales. So I got sucked into this world of social digital selling. And after, a lot of success, been able to generate a lot of revenue from it, build a huge following, build a huge personal brand. And, probably something you relate to as well, Mark. A lot of us that do leverage social, we start off with nothing. Like no one logs into LinkedIn one day and suddenly has hundreds of thousands of followers and a big personal brand. We all start with a zero network, a zero personal brand. But the opportunities that come from all of these things are amazing. So yeah, what I do now is I'm a keynote speaker, speak at events. I'm a trainer. I help sales teams leverage LinkedIn and social selling to its full potential. And as you mentioned, last year I wrote my first £1 million LinkedIn message, which focuses heavily around LinkedIn messaging, shares the story of how one message opened a £1 million deal for me, but also has 25 templates, as we already alluded to, real tactical stuff, not just stories, but actually here are templates you can take away and apply, tried, tested and proven. So yeah, for me, genuinely just passionate about helping salespeople, sales teams and businesses understand how to get real results from social, the real stuff that works.
Yeah, it's such a great platform, and you can really forge your own way in there. And like I say, you can start from nothing. And a lot of people often say to me, I feel like I'm too late, and I think in a lot of cases, you're actually better off starting with nothing. If you can build a network with just 200 connections and build it up from there quite quickly, if you follow some systems and processes, it's going to give you a network of real value. But I'm interested if you're prepared to share, Dan, can you just give us a quick couple of sentences around the £1 million LinkedIn message and how that came about and what happened there without giving the secret of your book away completely?
Yeah, no spoilers. This is, I think the £1 million LinkedIn message goes back, say, about 5 or 6 years. I have to double check when exactly it was that the whole story happened. But I was selling into the IT software industry, and it was midpoint in my social selling journey. So I sort of had a fair amount of skills, but was still also learning, through this experience. But it shares the story essentially of how I targeted a large global company, how I used LinkedIn to find the right decision maker, do research before approaching. Obviously, it's got the £1 million message itself, so the message that actually opened the door. And then I take it through the process of leveraging other tools and other areas of LinkedIn across, I think it was about a 2-month process before finally sort of closing the deal. It's just a good example of how messaging done right can create brilliant opportunities. And I'm sure you experience this as well, but my inbox is filled, pretty much daily with horrendous sales pitch messages on LinkedIn. And I see the horrendous examples shared by other people, again, all the time. And I think a lot of people lose faith in LinkedIn messaging. They sort of compare it already to cold calling and things like that, where people just have this negative perception of it. But the reality is far from it. Good messaging works very, very well. It's just about what you say. And it's kind of ditching the pitch and actually looking to start conversations. And that's what the book's all about. And that was what sort of my early lessons in using LinkedIn was about. It's not about spray and pray, copy and paste hundreds of sales pitches into messages and just message out your entire network. It's about, finding the right people and starting real conversations. That's where real results come.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So there you go. Listeners, grab yourself a copy of the £1 million LinkedIn message. I like the way that you didn't give us the message. That would have cost you a lot of money.
It would have done.
Okay, so what was the thing? I'm interested to know, what was the thing that happened, if you like, that made you jump onto social? So you said you were cold calling, you were doing traditional sales. What was the thing that made you go, well, hang on a second, when I talk to people, there's nearly always something that's happened, if you know what I mean. There was some sort of shift in their mindset or some sort of outside force. Is there anything like that with you?
Yes, there were three components. Number one was, sort of over the sort of recent years building up to this, I'd started to notice some of the challenges with traditional sales techniques, just lower conversion rates, lower answer rates on the phone. It was much more of an uphill challenge. Mix that with a few people within my company sort of talking about LinkedIn, no one really using it, but just sort of mentioning that they joined it. But one of those things, I had no interest in social media really at that time. So for me, it was like, okay, yeah, sounds great, whatever. But what I guess was the tipping point was when I had one of my prospects connect with me on LinkedIn. And back then, and I think it still happens, I'm not too sure. Back then, you can add someone to LinkedIn, obviously without them having a LinkedIn account. And what you do is if you don't have a LinkedIn account, you get an email from LinkedIn saying, so-and-so wants to connect with you, set up a profile. And that for me was the tipping point when it was one of my prospects sending me this. And I was like, okay, fine. Everyone's talking about it. Here is someone that, I'm actually trying to sell to, trying to connect with me on this platform I've never heard of. And that was the start of the journey. What pulled me in, for me personally, like I said, I'm stupidly passionate about sales and business. And so for me, it was quite a natural fit. I've never really been a social media person, never really been a fan of Facebook. I think I was like 18 when Facebook first came out. And, I'd lived my youth without social media. So I was never really into it. But when there was this social media network that was pretty much purely professional, that's where there was this sort of instant gel. And I just became consumed by it. I just absolutely loved finding prospects, finding customers. I loved the content. So it was professional content. People were writing these amazing blogs and articles and sharing these great posts. It was all brilliant work, workplace stuff. And yeah, that was the gel. And then, the rest is history.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you use any other outbound prospecting methods at the moment? Like, do you use any strategies? I mean, obviously you would pick up the telephone to talk to people. I understand that. But are you all in on LinkedIn, or do you spread across Twitter or some other platforms as well?
Yeah, I would say about 80% of what I do is done on LinkedIn, but I have a presence and I utilize pretty much every other avenue. So I utilize email, I utilize the phone, I utilize video, I utilize Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm in the early stages of exploring TikTok. I've started to see some of my target decision makers becoming quite active on TikTok and even sharing those videos on LinkedIn, which is quite crazy when you think about it. So yeah, I try to use, I think my advice to salespeople is exactly the same. Use whatever platforms your customers are using. So wherever my customers and prospects are, I need to make sure I have a presence. And I've won opportunities on all of them. But LinkedIn for me is the majority generator of business.
Yeah, likewise. I saw a presentation that you gave not too long ago. I'm pretty sure it was earlier this year. And you talked about a maze, a prospecting maze or something like that. Do you want to share that?
Yeah. So, again, I'm sure you're the same with this, Mark. One of the biggest challenges when you're trying to teach people social selling is to sort of open their eyes to appreciate what it is. And one of the things I sort of realized is everyone kind of goes into this instant defensive mode of, the phone's always going to be the best, social selling's nothing, it's not going to replace. Everyone gets defensive about it. And the reality is it's kind of the opposite. It's just a tool to complement other tools. So one of the best ways I thought about it, and it's helped a lot of people understand it better, is those sort of finger mazes you get in puzzles, sort of square mazes. You get 2 or 3 doors going into the maze. One leads to the middle as a puzzle, and all the rest lead to dead ends. And what I kind of rehashed it as was the modern day prospecting maze. And the reality for all of us is every single one of our prospects, every single one of our customers, even you and I, Mark, as consumers, we each sit within our own maze. And the difference between us is we each have different preferences. So for some people, they prefer the phone. And the best way that the only way you're ever going to get through to them is to pick up the phone and call them. But for others, they're not going to answer the phone. There are a lot of people out there. I met a decision maker of a multi-million-pound manufacturing company here in the UK who point blank said they never, ever answer cold calls, ever. But they spend a couple hours on LinkedIn in the morning, a couple hours of LinkedIn towards the end of the day. And that's where they've picked up a lot of their most recent suppliers. Some people, LinkedIn and social is the only sort of route into the maze that's going to get you to the prospect. For some others, it's going to be video. Others, it's going to be email. Everyone is different. There's no right or wrong. Can't, judge people on this. We each have our own choice. But as salespeople, our job is to make sure we're using as many of those sort of doors into the maze as possible. That's the only way you're going to reach the sort of maximum amount of prospects out there.
Yeah, I really love the way that you've described that there. I'm a big fan of deliberately trying to have a smarter targeting platform or mindset around who it is that you're trying to talk to, because you know that typical personas will be more likely to communicate in some methods than others. Trying to communicate to everybody, like 100% of your buyers, through one channel is going to be significantly less effective than if you split it across multiple channels. So I think that's awesome. And I think that a lot of us, and I'll put you and I in this bracket as professional social sellers, if you like, made it difficult for ourselves when in the 2015, that sort of time frame, when we were trying to educate people that LinkedIn was more than a place to hold your CV. And we were trying to agitate people around, look, the telephone's not working. And we actually created this sort of Grand Canyon crevice kind of gap in the ground where we created our own divide. And I think, collectively, and I'm not suggesting you or I did this on our own, but, whilst we're trying to agitate people to think about other methods beyond the phone, we created this huge gap. And that's actually made it more difficult, I think, for a lot of senior sales leaders to accept social selling and LinkedIn as a viable strategy, just not something where you're sitting around wasting time clicking on stories.
I totally agree. Social sellers have been a cause of this sort of split, but I think on equal measure, there is a big part of the fear of change. And there are a lot of people sort of working in sales that when you mention something new, they're instantly going to get scared and defensive, because when you've done something for a long time and it works, you've worked hard to master it. The thought of having to start from scratch with something is scary. And a lot of people, whenever they have to learn something new, get resistant to it. I mean, that's common in any business for any change that's implemented. And so, again, certainly what I'm passionate about, Mark, is just trying to ease that fear away and, try and go in a much more calmer way. Not a phone is dead, you need to use LinkedIn right away, but a reality of, look, you need to use them both. We all have to start from somewhere. Remember your first cold call? I remember my first cold call. It was scary as anything. But so was sending my first LinkedIn message. So was writing my first LinkedIn article. It's all scary the first time you do it. But the more you do it, the better you get, the more confident you get, and the more able you are to generate results from it. So as with anything, it's about, taking their hand and holding them through the journey, not trying to, push them in the deep end.
Yeah, and I think I can really tell that you're a salesperson, not a marketer. So, social selling has got a lot of people that are marketing orientated, and they're very, very good technically with LinkedIn. So they know the algorithm back to front. Oh, I don't know that anybody does, but they know the algorithm back to front, and very, very good on that front. But sometimes they fall over when it comes to the messaging side of things. I can tell just by talking to you today that you've got that real sales background rather than a marketing background. And as somebody that's also dyed in the wool, a salesperson, I think that's good to hear.
It makes a big difference, and I don't know. I'm sure you experience this as well. But when I go into a lot of companies, usually marketing has been responsible for their social selling strategy to date, and usually what that consists of is, right, everyone just reshare our company blog. That's all you need to do. And it's a failing strategy from day one. So I get it. Look, I have been able to build audiences and get great engagement, which are marketing activities and metrics. I understand, what you need to do that. But, I'm a salesperson at heart, Mark. I have a sales fire burning, inside me. I am out there to hunt and create opportunities. And again, one of the biggest misconceptions in social selling is people view it as either social marketing or social prospecting. And they sort of, put it into this individual camp that's all you can do with it. Whereas I think once you've used it properly, you start to understand that LinkedIn and social selling is a part of every single part of the sales process, from prospecting to closing to account management and to beyond, to rules, recommendations. LinkedIn and social is a part of every part of it. And when you use it right, you can create inbound opportunities, which of course is a marketing thing, but you can create outbound. You can actually go out and start conversations. And that's no different to me picking up the phone and phoning a prospect, or me cold messaging a prospect. It's just a different way of doing things. It should complement any sales strategy out there. What's scary is there are so many companies where the phone is still all they're doing.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you send a cold LinkedIn message to somebody, you're still interrupting them, which is what a lot of older school phone sales guys think that we should be doing.
Yeah.
We've still got to create that pattern and interrupt to start a conversation, regardless of which vehicle it is. But anyway, we won't go down that rabbit warren too far. I will say I'm pleased to hear that you've got the same marketing challenges with your clients as what I do. We must have some of the same clients by the sound of it.
Most business
strategy of let's just get everyone promoting the content from the website. That'll help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not. So, so let's get into the bones of things. Dan, like what we want to do is give people some tactical stuff to take away from today. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, what's your typical social routine and strategy? I know strategy and routine is slightly different, but, this is designed, I guess, to cover people that are more or less just starting out in their social space or their social journey, all the way up to people that have been doing it for a little bit more, so a little bit longer, and looking for some more thought out strategies, if you like. So what does your normal, typical social routine look like? What works for you?
Yeah, well, let me just kick off with a real basic thing. And this isn't necessarily part of my routine because obviously it's something I've done now. But for anyone starting off, and even for some of the people out there that are using LinkedIn quite, actively, you'd be surprised how many of them don't have a good one. But number one place to start off is your profile. Again, most companies I go into, 80 to 90% of the profiles are weak, really, really weak, tons of gaps. And it doesn't matter. You could be out there creating amazing content, right? You could get viral posts and you get hundreds of thousands of views. All those people then start coming to your profile. But if it's empty, if it's not written in the right way, it's like a bucket full of holes. You're just going to lose all of that potential business. So number one place for anyone is just go and review your profile. And a few of the key things I'd recommend having a look at is obviously your profile photo, shoulders and above, proper headshot, looking at the camera, a plain background, ideally just a plain color, a good LinkedIn banner background image. Again, one that, starts to tell people what it is you do and what it is you offer without being too cluttered and complicated. Have a good summary. The core theme has to be make it customer focused. Most LinkedIn profiles are focused on the salesperson because they are built like a CV and most people fill them in like a CV, but you're not trying to get a job. Hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you're trying to get sales. So what you want to do is make your profile about your customer. They don't want to know how great you are at selling. They don't want to know how many times you won President's Club and how many times you smashed your targets. They don't want to know that. That's going to scare them away. Tell them how you help people. Tell them what you help people achieve. All that kind of stuff that's going to make them read it and think, okay, I know what this person does. They look really credible. And if it's something that I'm interested in, right, I'm going to get in touch with them. So profile is going to be the first thing. Nothing complicated, but you'd be surprised how many people don't have a good profile.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also the first place I suggest people start. It's by far the most overlooked piece of LinkedIn. I think it's hard for people to be reflective on, the way that they're presenting. Like when you look at your own profile, it's hard to figure out, am I customer centric? Am I talking to my perfect client or am I? And I think it's easy for us to try and generate a profile that looks good for the person sitting in the office desk next to you or for your friends or something like that when, because that's how we build out our other social profiles, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. And this is the thing. One of the key things to remember is LinkedIn isn't Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not Twitter. It's its own separate entity and you need to treat it very differently. Each one of them operates very, very differently. They have different profiles. They have different audiences. But yeah, I guess best tip I can give is put yourself in your customer's shoes, read your profile and just think, would I buy from me? Is this a profile that would appeal to me as a consumer, not me as a salesperson?
Yeah, absolutely. And what else have you got?
Yeah, so okay, profile's done. Now we can start getting into some more actionable stuff. So for me, every day, first thing I do is I read through my feed. So I have a scroll through. I tend to time myself at no more than 10 to 15 minutes max. I say that for a good reason. It's very easy to lose. I think one of the biggest places you can lose time on LinkedIn is just scrolling. You'd be amazed at how fast time can go. You can start scrolling and look at the clock and then suddenly an hour's gone past. Very easy to get consumed in it. So, but just have a read through what's going on in the industry, what's going on with your audience, your network. In there should be a lot of prospects and customers. So you should be learning, what's going on in their world, what's happening. You might find buying signals. You might find inspiration for content. But having a good read through the feed. Now, whilst you're doing that, you want to do task number 2, which is engage. So one of the big things about building a personal brand is getting your name out there. So by engaging on 2, 3, 4 posts every day at the start of the day means that your name's going to be appearing several times in people's feeds. And these are all parts of the building steps of building a personal brand. So as you're reading through, find some really good industry relevant posts and add a like and add a comment. Add your thoughts. So don't just put great post, but actually share your thoughts. Great post, actually something very similar happened to me. Comments done right generate likes. Some comments get more likes than the original post itself. But these are great ways to get your name out there, get your thoughts out there, and again, contribute to that sort of personal brand building. So scroll through your feed, do your research, do your homework, get your comments out there, start engaging in the industry. And then that leads nicely to task 3, which is share a post. And my recommendation is post, once a day, Monday to Friday. If you're new to this and you've not done it before, 2 or 3 times a week is absolutely fine for the start. Build up for, a few weeks or maybe a month. And then, hopefully as you build confidence and start to get comfortable with it, aiming for a sort of a Monday to Friday, once a day post is great. You can do Saturdays and Sundays as well. There's no right or wrong with that. Some people take the weekends off and that's absolutely fine and totally acceptable. Some people, are still active on LinkedIn and they like to post. It's totally up to you. But once a day, doing your post, again, those activities will start to instantly help you generate results and certainly start to build the building blocks of a good personal brand. Do that consistently and regularly, you're on the right track. That's my sort of general daily routine at the start. I'll then go into messengers, reply to anyone who sent me a LinkedIn message. And then I start to go into the more tactical stuff around, actually targeting prospects and bringing people through the sort of sales cadence and stuff.
Oh, great stuff. So, on the engagement front there, it's interesting. I'm starting to think that liking comments and liking interactions is almost useless. I think you need to be able to provide comments because there's so much activity now that if 50 people have liked an article, you can really get lost. I don't think you get the traction that we used to.
No.
And I think when you make a comment, people see your name and your title. So you're sort of there, and if you're commenting on something that's important to your industry and to the people that you're trying to target and talk to and build some authority with, which is what you should be doing, then you want your name and your title to be seen. You want Dan Disney, LinkedIn social trainer, kickoff expert
exactly
to pop up. So every time somebody sees or goes to that industry specialist content, you want them to see you as well. And I think a like underdoes it. And I think when I talk to my clients, particularly early on in the engagement, they move to liking very, just like. But I just don't think it's very powerful. I think it's got 5% weighting these days. What's your thoughts around that?
Hiding in the shadows. No one can see it unless they click open the likes and scroll through them. They're never going to see you've liked it. Obviously, it will make up in their notifications or in their feed that you've liked it. But even that in itself is still quite a hollow task. It's definitely. I mean, do like it. Don't not like it. It's important to add that like comment as well. The comments where you really start to become visible, and that's how brands are built. That's how personal brands are built. You're not going to be known if you're hidden in the shadows, just liking in the background. People get to know companies and celebrities from constant presence. And the way you're constantly present is by getting your name out there, and comments is the best way. Like you say, they get to see your photo, they get to see your name, they get to see your title. Hopefully they'll get to see you write a really good comment as well. And comments then generate more engagement. So not only are you going to get likes on your comments, but people will start replying to your comment and you can have a conversation and suddenly one comment opens up into a nice little thread. And again, your name is getting out there, your thoughts, your knowledge, your insights. And that's how you kind of embed yourself, in your industry, which makes you valuable to your prospects.
Yep. Fantastic strategies. So I was wondering if you'd be prepared to share something, what's an engagement strategy that you've got to take some conversations online to that, that next step? So whether it be somebody engaging on, let's say, liking or commenting on a piece of your content, or better still, somebody else's, how do you start conversations from interactions? Because they're different, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, let me share a real story for you, Mark.
Oh, please, yeah.
This is a story that I only usually tell in my training, so this is a special
bonus,
special for you. But you're asking the right questions, Mark. You really are. And quite early on in my social selling journey, I was selling into the IT industry, trying to reach an IT director of a company. I was very confident that, I knew they'd be a great customer, but I could not get through to this IT director. Now, by chance, again, this is as I was starting to put more content out on LinkedIn. One day I wrote an article, put it out. And what I noticed after, I think it was about an hour, was one of the sales reps in that company clicked like. It wasn't the IT director. It wasn't anyone else in the IT department. It wasn't my target prospect directly, but it was someone else in that company had clicked like. They didn't write a comment. They didn't message me or anything like that. They just clicked the like. But I checked likes for this very, obvious reason. So what I did was I sent them a message. Now, again, key thing with this is I didn't message them saying, thanks for clicking like. I'm trying to get through to your IT director. Can you help me? I didn't just jump in the deep end and, pitch them straight away. Just started a conversation. And I just said, hey, thanks for clicking like on my post. What are your thoughts on on, the post subject. And we had a conversation. We went back and forth. I think it was about four or five messages chatting about the sort of subject, where I'd sort of built enough of a rapport, I'd, given enough value that I was able to then go, actually, it's funny. I've been trying to reach your IT director for a month now. This is what we do here, and I really think we might be able to help them. Is there any chance you might be able to help, get me an introduction? Which they were more than happy to do. They'd got the value from the article that they obviously liked. They got the value from the conversation, and they made the introduction. And that introduction turned into an arranged phone call, which I was then able to turn into a meeting and eventually a sale. So my key thing with turning engagement into conversation is exactly that. Have a conversation. Don't turn it into a sales pitch. Don't go in, jumping in, trying to sell something. Just talk to them. You've got a perfect thing to talk about, which is whatever the content is that you've got in common, whatever they've liked or commented on or engaged on. Talk about that. Talk about that subject. Build the rapport, lay the foundations. Then you can start to progress it if it's going in that direction.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? So, I like to talk about the bar for rapport on social is actually quite low. If you think about all the bad interactions that we get, it's typically a connection, maybe a message and then a pitch, or a connection and then a pitch straight away. So there's not a lot of interactions before you get that pitch if it's somebody that's just generally trying to sell you rather than build any kind of relationship. So that's the bad side of LinkedIn and social selling. The good side is that you only need to put one extra touch in there, and you're already standing out in the top 5%, or probably less, top 2% of people on LinkedIn. So, if you and I connected, then you said, "Hey, Mark, thanks for connecting. Here's something." And then I went, "Oh, that's pretty cool, man. I really appreciate that." Then, a week later, you said, "Here's something else," or "Did you see this? I thought you might like that." It's really easy to start these conversations if you don't ask. And the bar for trust is actually quite low. It can come up really quickly if you can hold off not pitching for just the first couple of interactions. And I'm not suggesting you should pitch, on interaction number 4 or 5 or 6. I'm just simply saying that, to build a conversation, it's actually quite easy to do. The bar's quite low.
I refer to it as sort of sales autopilot. If you tell someone to sell something, they go into this weird autopilot mode where they try to convince you to buy something. They'll start spilling out features and benefits. And that's unfortunately the sort of go-to reaction to being asked to sell something. If you tell someone to go and help someone, they'll go out there and they'll start asking questions because they need to know the information they need to then provide a solution. 2 totally different mindsets. And when you're using LinkedIn, and it's not, this is sales 101 anyway. It's not about going out and selling a product. It's about going out and solving a problem. So when you're talking to people, when you're engaging, get to know people. You don't just walk up to someone randomly and say, "Do you want to buy this?" You want to understand what they might need, why they might need it, what they're looking for. You need that information. And if you want them to buy from you, they need to trust you. They need to like you. So you have to build a relationship. So switch off autopilot, stop thinking about selling, and just go out there and meet people, talk to them. One of the beauties and one of the best parts of LinkedIn is they may not be a customer. That person you're talking to may not be a customer. If you jump in with the pitch, you're going to lose them as in any opportunity. But if they're not a customer, they may know someone who is. And again, if you can build that relationship up first, they may not be at the right stage or the right time to buy from you, but chances are they'll know people who are. Most people in any department will know other people in the same department in other companies. Most of us have pretty big LinkedIn networks. You might talk to someone, they're not just an individual. As an individual, you also represent your entire LinkedIn audience. There could be 500, 5,000. So switch off that autopilot and just go in and just have conversations. Is a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable for you as a salesperson because you've not got this huge on your shoulders that you have to get an outcome. But you'd be surprised at how many more results you'll generate from it.
Yeah, no, look, and I had Bryn Tillman on the pod recently, and I'm sure Bryn, you know Bryn. She's excellent. We were talking about how to engage people, and she reminded me just how easy it is to leverage our connections and to get a referral or a pass into another business, So if you're connecting with people to build relationships, like you've just said, you don't know, if I'm talking to Bob, and then I realise in 6 months' time that Bob's now at a business that I'd like to talk to, or he actually already was, I can say, hey, if I've had a good interaction with Bob, a couple of good interactions with Bob, he's going to be significantly more likely to pass me up the line to his boss, or across departments, if you like, or wherever it is, if that interaction's been good and ethical, as I like to call it. And Bryn's such an expert at just using those really second connections, if you like. Hey, I see that you're working with X. Any chance you can help me find a way to have a conversation with Y?
Yeah.
And it's really literally that simple. She's just an absolute expert at it. And I'd forgotten almost about how easy some of those things were to do.
I'll give you a quick insight on this, Mark. One of the beauties of a personal brand on LinkedIn is that you start to get recommended or referred business. And what I found is, I would say about 60 to 75% of the business that I get recommended or referred to through my personal brand, the majority, the 60 to 75%, have never actually bought from me. They've never been a customer. I've never provided them any formal training. They've, not read my book, or at least not told me that they have. These are just people that I've either built a relationship through the content I've shared or conversations that we've had in passing on LinkedIn. But the power of that is, do that right, and they become your little ambassadors, and they will generate you business. So again, it's not about just trying to sell to anyone and everyone. I'm not a huge fan of the word tribe, but it does represent it quite well. Build your audience, build your kind of community of people, immerse yourself in your industry, and the value comes in. And what I love about the whole referral piece is a great statistic, and I'm probably out with a percentage here or there, but it's something like 91% of customers would be happy to give a referral, but only 11% of salespeople ask for them. And, I see it. I see it day in and day out. Don't be scared to utilize either customers or people in your network to find opportunities. Most people are happy to do so.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think those percentages are right on, by the way. They're the exact numbers that I use. Okay. So they must be right. Fantastic. And what I like about those examples were, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the way social works, is that you have to take the initiative and reach out to start the conversation. Because if you just sit back and wait for leads to come in, that's not the way social works. You don't post content and wait for people to ring up and say, hey, can you come out and talk to us about your products and services? You've got to be actively trying to start conversations. And I like that, the way that you've shared that. That's good. So, Daniel, LinkedIn and social, do you think it's getting better, or have we seen the best days? What do you think? Have we seen the best of it, or have we got better to come?
I think we are still very much riding a very good wave on LinkedIn. I think people like you and I have been lucky to have caught that wave quite early on, which I'm certainly grateful for doing so. But actually what I'm seeing now is that wave is still strong. I am seeing people starting to use LinkedIn now. So we're talking this year, we're talking in the last few months, and they're able to build great personal brands. They're able to grow their businesses. They're able to generate opportunities in the space of weeks or months. If anything, it's kind of looks easier now, and maybe that's because there's more of us out there showing them how to do it, but it certainly looks easier now than it was when I started, 7-8 years ago. But yeah, LinkedIn is definitely still riding a very powerful wave. People can, you could start using it today, and within, a month or two, you can have a really good personal brand in your industry. Messaging is only getting better because, again, when I started using LinkedIn, you could only send written messages. Now you can send audio and video messages, and video messages are just opening this whole new goldmine of opportunities. So I think LinkedIn is very much in its prime. It's not too late, far from it. Now is as good a time as ever to start using it, and the opportunities are as open as they were, several years ago. So yeah, now is definitely the time to do it, because at some point there is a high chance it will go down the road of like Facebook, where it is near impossible to join Facebook today and, become an influencer or build a huge business on it. It's a very, very steep uphill struggle. Whereas LinkedIn now, you're riding a very strong wave. So yeah, I think it's, brilliant time right now. And I think we've probably got at least 2 to 3 years of it being like this before they start to really push down on more of the sort of paid ads and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it feels like the barrier for entry now is lower than it's ever been. Yeah. And you mentioned my favorite word at the moment, video message. I tell you what, Daniel, I am getting huge amounts of responses from video messages on LinkedIn. I'm getting like 90% response rates. Yeah. I'm not sending hundreds of them because they take a few minutes to send each one, but I'm sending dozens a week and I'm getting dozens of replies. I've not seen anything so powerful. No. Are you finding the same?
Exactly the same. And I was sort of banging this drum for probably about a year and a bit now. And, so we're talking about LinkedIn and whether it's too late. LinkedIn's at its prime at the moment. Video is in the early stages. So video now is where LinkedIn was, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We're just at the start of the sort of video transformation of sales. And the reason it's working so well is because it takes all of the best components of other forms of communication and brings them together. So you've got what you're saying, which, you'd have written in an email, but you're adding voice to it, you're adding tone to it. And then you're adding in the extra element of that, near face-to-face experience where they get to see you. They get to see the look in your eyes. They get to see you smiling. Instead of just hearing you smiling, they get to see it. All these things have a huge impact in communication. And video is such a powerful tool. And I'll give you a quick example from this. I had someone message me a couple of weeks ago, really excited because they received their first video message from a salesperson on LinkedIn. And they were excited because most of their messaging comes through written and often really terrible sales pitches. And whilst there were a few errors in the video itself, just the fact it was a video caught their attention. And that's, again, the power of video is massive. So it's an exciting time, but no different to all areas of social. So many salespeople are already doing it wrong. And I think this comes from because we use social media for our personal lives, we think we know what we're doing. And it's unfortunately very different on LinkedIn. So literally just flipping your camera on your laptop and recording a video probably isn't enough. And there are so many mistakes that salespeople are making, from what it is they're wearing, to what's in their background, to the quality of the lighting in the video, to what they're saying. I mean, this particular video, the person who was excited about it sent me the actual video. And I think there were more ums in the video than there were words. So it was sort of, hi, my name is Dan and I'm calling, and it was so nervous. And there's all these little things that, again, I think, salespeople should appreciate when you're doing something new. Learn how to do it first, then practice. First video I ever did, Mark, was horrendous. And I was scared as anything. I mean, I hated it. Sitting in my car, holding my phone and recording myself doing a video was so uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the more you self-critique or get other people to critique, it's the only way you learn. Same as cold calling, same as anything.
Yep. Look, 100% agree on the practice thing. I think that's absolutely critical. And I think that might be a little soundbite there when you said so many people are doing that. They're taking standard social media strategies and trying to apply it to LinkedIn, and that's where they're going wrong. I think that's a great little grab there. So my last question, Dan, is if people have been listening to this, choose to go away and take action on just one thing to improve their social game, what would you say they should do?
So if you were to do one thing, I would recommend start posting content. If I was to suggest anything that's going to yield a bigger impact overall on all other areas of LinkedIn, just go out there and start posting content. It's a scary one. First time, always going to be difficult, but you'll get good at it. Even if your first post gets 1 like, that's 1 like. The next time you do it, you might get 2 likes. Maybe the next time you get 5 likes. The first post I did got barely any engagement, but it's getting off the start line. Most salespeople are stood at the start line and they're nervous to get started. Just take that first step. Share a bit of content, even if it's just a thought or a story or a photo of your working desk. Share something. Share a book review. Talk about a book you've just read, or maybe a podcast you've listened to. Maybe talk about this podcast. If you've really got no ideas and you're struggling, write a post about this podcast. Write about the key takeaways you took, what you enjoyed about it, what you learned from it, and share that with your audience. You'd be amazed at how many people will find that beneficial. And if anything, it will get you started. It will help you build that confidence. Keep doing it. You'll be a content master in no time.
Love it. Daniel Disney, thank you very much for sharing all those wonderful tips on the Boss podcast. You've certainly proven yourself to be a true boss, best of social selling. Thank you, mate. Thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate
That's all right,
it.
Mark. Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Please help others just like you find this podcast by spreading the word. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate us wherever you source your podcast. Thank you for listening to the Boss Podcast. Join us next time for even more tactics, discussion, and ideas to help you improve your social outreach.